Well, Mike, I see that we're both wearing green in honor of this very special day.
Yes, you have an official Gremlin sweater. I wore the closest thing. I had a Green Bay Packers shirt. It's green, it has a G. It's as close as you're gonna get.
Oh, I was wearing this because I love Christmas.
Oh, it's just a coincidence?
Is that what we're talking about today? Gremlins?
Gremlins 2, the new batch.
Well, real quick, if anyone's wondering our thoughts on Gremlins 1, and they don't know, we did an entire commentary track for it a couple years ago. We'll link that somewhere.
And we do talk a lot about Gremlins 2 on our Gremlins 1 commentary track. So
yes, we do.
There might be some repetition here, but...
We'll try and avoid that. The most important part of our Gremlins commentary track is when we pitch Gremlins 3.
Yeah, and we should actually start off with that, because I had a couple of new thoughts.
Oh, okay.
On Gremlins 3.
Well, the basic idea, we recorded that commentary track the day that Trump got elected president.
Did we?
We did. That's like the first thing we mentioned. It was the day that it was announced that he was president.
Huh.
And obviously in Gremlins 2, there's the Daniel Clamp character, which is partially based on Donald Trump from that era. We'll get
Very
into that.
much so.
Well, but it's also Ted Turner. He's like an amalgam of Trump and Ted Turner.
He's a real estate. The Ted Turner part, it comes with the colorization of old black and white movies.
Yeah, running a TV network and all that stuff.
But there is the Marla character, who was based on Marla Maples, Trump's second wife.
But the point being, in our Gremlins 3 pitch, we said that Daniel Clamp is now president of the United States.
Yes.
And the Gremlins take over the White House. That was our idea.
I think it was the country. I think we were going big.
Oh, okay. I just remember we were going to show them like in the Senates and just yelling at each other.
Sure. It starts at the White House and it spreads from there.
Okay.
And Billy Peltzer is the official, like maybe he's the official president portrait painter, or he's in charge of some department that has to do with art.
Sure.
He's moved up in the ranks. So you go small town, New York City skyscraper, country.
Sure.
So it starts in the White House and it spreads from there. I picture Gremlins all jumping in to the reflecting pond in the National Mall.
Oh, yeah.
Snuffing out the eternal flame at the Kennedy Memorial. You could do an Abraham Lincoln joke with Phoebe Cates.
Oh, don't mention Lincoln. Something terrible happened to me one year on Lincoln's birthday.
Oh,
at the Lincoln Memorial.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just... But what I was thinking of this morning in terms of Gremlins 3, I thought Gremlins 1, simple small town. Gremlins 2, automated skyscraper, the first smart building.
Yeah, before smart things was a thing.
Was that coined then? I don't know, but it was like, wow.
Yeah.
They said smart, and she does figure quotes too.
The Clamp Center is the most advanced smart building in America with the latest in security, communications, and climate control.
And then I thought Gremlins into technology. Gremlins have taken over people's Twitter accounts. And then I pictured just Gremlins just walking down the street looking at their phones. They don't really cause a ruckus like in physical reality, they just do on the internet.
Oh.
So
it's a reflection of reality.
Yes, then. Yes. They are the quintessential internet trolls.
Oh, okay.
And they just sit on computers all day and just like harass people. They hack into your bank accounts, into your Twitter accounts.
They hack your Twitter account and say gay slurs.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Very similar to now, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, speaking of Gremlins anarchy, Gremlins 2.
Gremlins.
It's the entire movie. The movie was made by Gremlins.
I'm glad I rewatched this film. I've watched it, I want to say, I've watched it more than the original. And
Really?
I am a person that did not like this at first.
That's why it's surprising to hear you've seen it so many times.
It's weird, yeah. The first one is of course a flawless, perfect movie.
Perfect in its imperfection. There's various like subplots that just vanished from the movie. Judge Reinhold is just gone. His little subplot was deleted.
That's all right.
It's fine. The effects are a little janky in parts.
Yeah.
And which led to Joe Dante not wanting to do a sequel. He did the first one, and the Gremlins never worked. It was like they were figuring out the technology as they made the movie, so there was all these problems. And that's the backstory is he's like, all right, I'm done with fucking Gremlins. And then the studio went off and tried to put together their own Gremlins 2. They couldn't come up with any ideas that they thought would work, so that like 5 years later, they went back to Joe Dante and said, maybe you had something to do with why it was successful, do whatever you want. Which leads to possibly the weirdest sequel to like a big blockbuster movie ever made.
Yes, and we'll start with that because I was anticipating this movie as a kid. I was so excited for it, and I would always read Roger Ebert's movie reviews every Friday in the Chicago Sun-Times. And I remember distinctly, I opened it up to the arts and entertainment section, the Chicago Sun-Times, and I was like, Ebert's going to talk about Gremlins 2. And I remember the article.
And this is before you saw the movie?
Before I saw the movie, of course. And the picture that they used was Billy Peltzer in the dentist's chair with the crazy-eyed gremlin.
Daffy is his name.
Oh, Daffy, right.
They all have names.
That's true. And that said 2.5 stars. I was like, what? How can this be?
Disappointed that it was so low.
Yeah. It was an average.
2.5 stars is like average, but
for Ebert, it's like, yeah. But 4 stars, of course, is the best for Ebert. But you looked this up, and I remembered it correctly.
2.5 stars, you were right.
And what was the most shocking thing you discovered?
The most shocking thing that I discovered in rereading his review is that he said it was basically just more of the same, which it most definitely, well, it is and it isn't, because on a very surface level, this movie does exactly what, especially at the time, a lot of sequels were, which is it's basically the same story, just bigger.
Bigger stakes.
Bigger
Different
stakes.
Location.
Another thing, I don't know why this was so big in the 80s and 90s, but sequels, they would always go to New York. They would go to the big city, which I compiled a list of movies that do this.
Well, off the bat, I can think of Home Alone 2, Lost in New York.
Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, Babe.
Babe 2, Pig in the City.
There's also Friday the 13th 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Muppets Take Manhattan. Everybody was taking Manhattan.
That's right.
Crocodile Dundee 2. Short Circuit 2. But yeah, so on paper, it's the same basic structure as the first movie. Billy gets the Mogwai. The Mogwai gets wet, gives birth to, I don't know why, whenever Gizmo births other Mogwais, they're always evil, even though he isn't. That always happens. Then, you know, the escalation of the Mogwais torture Gizmo. The Mogwais turn into Gremlins. The Gremlins multiply, and then they have to kill them. Yeah. Exact same structure, the difference being that the plot in this movie does not matter whatsoever, because this is a movie that Joe Dante didn't want to make. They told him to do whatever he wanted, so he used the opportunity to, one, just make a gag-a-minute Looney Tunes, live-action Looney Tunes movie that also mocks everything about the first film. And there's a very short list of movies that kind of do that, where they have this sort of meta quality or like are critical of the movie that came before it.
Empire Strikes Back is one.
Oh, of course, yeah. No reservations about making fun of Star Wars. No. Are you thinking of The Last Jedi?
Oh, yes, sorry. No. That went full Looney Tunes.
No. But that's the ones that I can think of. Like, I was going to mention The Last Jedi or like Blair Witch 2, which acknowledges that the first Blair Witch movie was a movie. Okay. So any of the other ones I can think of are like horrible failures, whereas Gremlins 2 is wonderful in its own right.
But there are still really great Gremlin scenes in this, and I think I think that's what was like. He didn't go full out of control, goofy, and he rode the line very carefully.
Yeah. Well, this doesn't go off the rails in terms of the narrative. There's still that story as a basic framework to hold everything on. Unlike we also talked about like Freddy Got Fingered, where it's Tom Green didn't want to make a movie. Right. He made a movie, and there is sort of a story, but it falls off a lot. This one, story's fine. It's the first movie again, basically, structure-wise. So, but it's an excuse to hang all this other stuff on, and also be satirical of not only the first movie, but kind of trends that were going on at the time.
Oh wait, are the peanut butter cups all natural? I'm not sure. Alex, are the peanut butter cups all natural?
I think so. I know they're pesticide-free.
There's a little sequence that takes place at like a frozen yogurt stand. And
the Health Nut Lady.
Yeah, and just the idea of like the smart technology, which that I don't even know if it's satire. That was just ahead of its time. He predicted the future.
Yeah. The archery channel.
Well, that's the other thing is too, like when the movie came out, it's Clamp, in the same building with all these, the first few floors are like a mall, and then there's like a cable TV station up top. And at the time the movie was made, it was like laughable that there would be all these different channels for all these very specific things. But that's not satire anymore. That's just what exists.
But those are some great gags. So the archery channel, the guy comes out, he's dressed like Robin Hood for no reason. He snaps his bow.
Well, that's, all those little details, all those little Joe Dante, like just quick visual gags.
There's so many gags. The one of the big scenes is the introduction of the genetics lab.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And that's like, I wouldn't say gag a minute, Jay. I'd say gag every 5 seconds. That initial introduction, splice of life, designer jeans, and then you walk in.
Well, and the mad scientist is played by Christopher Lee.
Oh, Dr. Catheter, this just came for you.
Oh, splendid. This must be my malaria.
Yeah, Dr. Catheter.
Dr. Catheter.
I've already got rabies, and then he's like,
How's the cloning work coming along?
Really well, Doctor.
Lewis?
There's so many wonderful little gags.
And the twins, their names are Martin Lewis, which is Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis. So it's like everything. It's,
so many.
We're not going to list them all. In fact, we were originally going to do a commentary track for the movie, but then re-listening to the Joe Dante commentary track, he covers all that stuff. So
right, we would just be repeating everything Joe Dante said, and so just watch the Gremlins 2 Blu-ray with the commentary track, and you get. I got so much information in the first 10 seconds, and so I rewatched the film then from the beginning without commentary track to kind of get my own thoughts on it.
Yeah.
As opposed to just regurgitating what Joe Dante had said, and producer and Zach Galligan, star of the film, Zach Galligan,
star of Gremlins and Gremlins 2 and
Waxwork 2.
He's in the Waxwork movies, yeah. I like him in those.
Take this.
I remember...
He's kind of the straight man. He's just sort of what strings the plot along. And this movie has a lot of great supporting characters, lots of great comedic characters. Like the first one, I guess you have like Dick Miller, but everyone else is kind of normal.
Right.
The dad, I guess, is the wacky inventor or whatever. But this movie, you've got... My favorite is the Al Lewis late night horror TV show host.
Grandpa Munster.
Yeah, clearly based on Grandpa Munster.
I love just how pure Billy and Kate are. Yeah. They're just so, like, I don't know. Even when he goes off on the date with Marla,
Oh, he's like a little kid. He doesn't know what's happening. Right.
At
the Canadian-themed restaurant.
Yes, he's clearly being seduced or attempted to be seduced by Marla because she's just power hungry.
Yeah.
And of course she gravitates to Clamp at the end, which is the perfect arc for her character.
Yeah.
But yeah, Phoebe Cates is just like naive, and he comes home with the lipstick on his mouth, and she, if we get through this alive, Billy, you're in big trouble.
But they walk from Times Square to where Clamp Tower is in reality. I've been to that building. When I was in New York for work, I went there specifically to see Clamp Tower. And it's not anywhere near Times Square, so that's a little movie trickery.
Yeah, we own several Gremlins items.
Sure, now's as good a time as any to... I think we showed these in a video in the past.
Yeah. We're very proud of our Gremlin arms.
We have these... These are not articulated arms, so whatever they were used in the movie, it was probably just a background.
During a chaos scene of just things happening.
Which they had plenty of them. I mean, we'll talk about the creatures in this movie because it's insane.
Yeah, these are not hero shot arms or anything like that. And we also own a Gremlin ball.
This is for when the Gremlins, this is elaborated on from the first movie. You don't really see, like, they get wet and then just more pop out. But in this movie, you see, they form little, like, boils on their backs, and then you can see a tiny little gremlin inside the boil. When they cut to the extreme close-up, it's clearly an oversized back.
It's a giant,
But for the full regular-sized Gremlins, they had these little guys on their backs.
Yeah, and this was probably one of 100,000 that were just on, little ones just in the baking stage.
Yeah.
Then they had, clearly probably ones that were like this big that were articulate, and everyone, movie magic. Same with Gizmo, too. A lot of extreme close-ups of Gizmo. So
they could get more articulation. They built an oversized head. And the first movie, the effects were done by Chris Walas. I think when this one came around, he was directing...
He was unavailable.
I want to say he was directing, like, The Fly 2, that hit film. So they brought in Rick Baker. And it's funny because the whole reason that Joe Dante was hesitant about doing a Gremlins 2 was like how much of a hassle it was working with the Gremlins in the first movie. And then he does this one, and he's like, fuck it, let's have 1,000 times more Gremlins. But Rick Baker's a pro. He knows what he's doing, clearly. And these are definitely, they're more articulates, there's more of them. There's more variety, of course, because of the gene splicing laboratory.
And that was a Rick Baker stipulation, was he didn't want to do somebody else's design. He wanted to do, and they're like, oh, you go nuts.
Just, do whatever the fuck you want. We'll have a vegetable gremlin.
It's eating my vegetable medley.
And I always thought the Gremlins, their differences, because the first one, they're all just like, there's subtle differences in them, but they're all basically the same. This one, they're just like crazy.
Yeah.
And that's, of course, from the genetics lab, but the initial four Mogwai that come out of Gizmo are all, one's like black and white, one's orange.
Yeah.
And I always attributed that to the fact that the water from the water fountain hit Billy's painting, trickled down the painting and hit Gizmo.
So like the paint mixing in with the water affected how they...
Yes, because all those colors are in the painting.
I have never thought about that.
That's what I always, these things were always in my head. When you see the water though in like high definition and the Blu-ray, it's just clear water. And also, my theory is disrupted because in the first film, the water that knocks on Gizmo is in a cup of Billy Peltzer's paintbrushes.
That's true.
So that just throws that theory out the window.
Son of a bitch.
I need answers. But I always thought, hey, that was clever. The paint mixed in, or the water mixed in with the paint, went down. You know, this
never
thing,
even thought about that.
And then you got those oranges. They need a green one though, because Marla made an emphasis on the trees. We need more trees, so they needed a green gremlin too to really punch that up.
It'll be better with the trees.
Are they going to plant trees there?
No, but you're going to draw them.
I got so many ideas, Jay.
This will be in Gremlins 3, Gremlins in the White House.
Can we call it Gremlins 3 Gremlin World?
Gremlin World.
As a knock on Jurassic World.
Oh, yeah.
Let's lose those elm trees, though, Bill. People see elm, they think Dutch, disease.
Absolutely.
Dun 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 dun. There's so much to cover in this movie.
There's too much. That's why we're not going to talk about every specific reference because it's just insane. Yeah. But as far as we were talking earlier about supporting characters, there's Clamp, of course, who on paper in script form is clearly meant to be an antagonist. But then they cast John Glover, who was recently seen in Shazam. And he just has this like boyish, like excited about everything that gives the character a different kind of dimension.
I don't think he was meant to be an antagonist. The antagonist in the film is Robert Picardo.
Sure.
Who, of course, we all know from Inner Space. He played the cowboy in Inner Space.
Yeah.
Women love me, but you know that.
And nothing else.
He had sex with his boots on and his hat. Robert Picardo recently tweeted.
That's what I was going to mention. Yeah, a picture of him wearing the Lady Gremlin T-shirt. Still keeping Gremlins 2 alive.
Yeah,
good for Robert Picardo.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, we interviewed Robert Picardo.
Oh yeah,
way back in the day.
We asked him about working with Joe Dante.
We asked him about working with Joe Dante, and more specifically, I asked him about working with Zach Galligan because. This is an old half in the bag, so a lot of you might not remember it, but Robert Picardo, of course, Gremlins 2, he plays Forrester, the security chief, and you know, it's a big role in the film, but he's the antagonist, minor character. Billy Peltzer, of course, is the star, played by Zach Galligan. And then years later, Star Trek Voyager, Robert Picardo is, of course, the holographic doctor, and Zach Galligan is in an episode.
Who's that? One of Starfleet's finest. Take us to Voyager.
And he has like one line.
Really? That's it?
Where am I?
So it's just a little scene. And I was like, hey, that's the Gremlins guy. And why is it? And then Robert Picardo's there.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask Robert Picardo, it's like, when you were, did you even remember? like when you run into somebody like that, like Robert Picardo's worked with so many people on so many projects. I was like,
it's like, oh yeah, we were in Gremlins too.
I was like, do you chit chat with these people? Like, hey, remember Gremlins? That was a great time.
Yeah.
All the slime everywhere. get back to work, Picardo. We're starting the next take. Talking about Gremlins. I was like, do you ever do that? And then he's like, oh, sure. And they started talking about Phoebe Cates' Broadway play. And he just went off the rails. I was like, talk about Zach Galligan and talk about Star Trek Voyager.
Talk about the things I want you to talk about.
Talk about the things I want you to talk about. I don't want to hear about Phoebe Cates' Broadway play. But in Gremlins 2, you worked with Zach Galligan.
Yes.
And later on in Star Trek Voyager, Zach Galligan had a small part in that.
Yes, he did a guest star. It was nice to see him again.
So
I also did Gremlins 2 with Phoebe Cates, and I also did Chekhov's Three Sisters with Phoebe Cates on stage. So there you go.
Well, this film is also a 16 Candles reunion as well, because Marla, and this is played by the bitchy rival of Molly Ringwald in 16 Candles, and the stereotype Asian tourist is Geddy Watanabe, whose most famous roles are Long Duk Dong in 16 Candles.
Oh, no more Yankee, my wanky. The donga need food.
And he's also the karate instructor in UHF.
Hey, Cooney!
Hiya, George!
Beginner's class today, huh?
Yeah, they're so stupid! Stupid!
So his three most famous roles are these like ridiculous Asian stereotypes. And the funny thing about that is that actor is from like, I want to say Utah? Oh. And he sounds like a guy from Utah.
Oh, that's
He doesn't have any sort of like accent. So it's just kind of funny.
Work a camera. I am the camera. Oh, good. Come on with me.
It's great though because he has his little arc in this movie. He's super work a camera. I am a camera.
Yes, that's the famous line.
So
I am a camera.
So he becomes the camera operator for the Al Lewis what's he called in this? Grandpa Fred, I think.
Yeah, Grandpa Fred.
Who is this schlocky late night horror host, but desperately wants to be a news anchor. And so as the story goes along, he's trapped in the building with all the gremlins. So he starts. He uses Geddy Watanabe as his camera operator to broadcast his story to the world, and it's a wonderful little arc.
Everybody's got an arc.
Everybody's got an arc, even in this ridiculous movie that is just an excuse for gags and Gremlins mayhem. Everybody has their own little things going on.
Even Mrs. Futterman.
Yeah, the Futtermans are back. He thought they died in the first movie.
Yeah, that's...
they got ran over by a fucking semi or steamroller or whatever it is.
It was his...
It's like a cat, right?
Yeah, it's like a construction equipment or something like that.
But
it's like a snowplow.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Murray Futterman was like a snowplow driver.
Right.
There's a real gremlin in my cave!
Working class guy, but Joe Dante can't make a movie without Dick Miller, so he's just back. R.I.P. Dick Miller.
And they've come to visit Billy Peltzer all the way in New York City for some reason.
Just so they could be in the movie.
They're not even related to him. You've watched the full commentary?
I have, yeah.
Okay, because I wanted to mention something, and I don't know if it was addressed in the commentary. There's a scene, and it's not the first scene when it's always the Warner Brothers backlot. It's that scene.
Oh, that little that street, city street.
I want to say it's either one of those scenes. I think it's with Billy when he's either coming out of the police station.
Are you talking about the mimes?
No,
okay.
Not the mimes. I'm talking about a more subtle detail. There is a golden retriever that's overgrown that's on the street eating garbage.
Oh.
And I wanted to say, is that a reference to the ultimate fate of Billy Peltzer's dog? What was his dog's name?
Shit.
Barney.
Barney, yeah.
And I was like, is that a joke, an inside joke? Is that where Barney ended up? Like the family got rid of him once Billy left?
I never even noticed that dog before.
Yeah. And the dog is eating garbage. Like it's a stray.
Yeah.
But it's the same kind of dog, and it looks overgrown.
Interesting.
The Peltzers just got rid of Barney.
And he just happens to show up outside of their apartment, or
he made his way to
outside
New York
of the
City.
jail, whatever scene this is.
He's a stray. He's wandering the country. Maybe he's looking for Billy, and that was his one chance. So I don't know. If it wasn't addressed in the commentary...
That's not addressed in the commentary.
Only one
and
man,
I've never even noticed it.
Only one man can answer that question, and that's Joe Dante. And it's not like it was a real street.
Yeah.
It's a
clearly
film set.
The backlot set, yeah.
And a dog isn't just on the backlot set on camera. It's intentionally placed there by a person that works with movie animals.
Right.
Let's backtrack. Are youths, you as a youth, did you enjoy Gremlins 2?
Oh yeah,
you're more of an anarchist than me. I'm more of a structure guy.
I'm a tear it all down in your sequel, just make fun of everything. No, as a kid I liked it just because I mean the famous scene in the first Gremlins when they're partying in the bar and there's all sorts of goofy little gags. Like I loved that scene as a kid more than anything else. It kind of sticks out from the rest of the movie in the original film because the rest of it is so much darker.
See, I like the darker stuff. I like the monster lore.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I liked that stuff too, but the sequel to me, when I first saw it, it felt like an elaboration of that bar scene, where it's like, oh, that's just the whole movie.
Yeah.
It's just goofy. I didn't necessarily get the meta stuff until I was older, and so I liked the movie as a kid just as like this goofy comedy. And then when I got older, I was like, oh, they're making fun of the merchandising.
Yeah.
They're referencing the fact that the rules don't make any sense, which is a great scene in this movie where they're all doing the internet nitpicky thing and picking apart the fact that nothing about the lore of the Gremlins makes any sense.
What if they're eating in an airplane and they cross a time zone? I mean, it's always midnight somewhere.
In the first movie, that works as just like a fairy tale kind of folk tale. This is the rules to the creature.
And see, that's a great scene because that scene is actually frightening, and its tone is serious, and it's like, oh my gosh, this threat is big and it's frightening, and then it switches gears to comical scenes.
Yeah,
like the spider gremlin scene is horrifying.
That's true. Yeah,
and then there's wacky, like the cooking segment stuff, and
so let us ladle up some of our chowder noodles.
Microwave with Marge is the show.
Yeah, you could microwaving with Marge. Yeah,
where she's getting drunk on air while filming her show.
Some people use a dash of sherry. I use a lot. And she's drunk, and she makes terrible things like bean dip bologna roll-ups. And then at the end, she's like telling Mrs. Futterman how to like use like Cheese Whiz on stuff.
Yeah, Mr. Futterman's so uninterested.
Yeah. The movie is so funny. It's so jam-packed with cleverness and gags and memorable things. And I would say it now as a grown-up, it's equivalent to the first one.
As far as how much you like it?
Yeah.
Okay.
In quality.
Yeah.
Just like...
You just have to go into it knowing it's a very different type of movie.
Yes.
I mean, it's not just meta in terms of like referencing the first movie and like how the rules don't make sense, or referencing the merchandise, like at the end when Clamp is like, I look at him and I see dolls with suction cups. But also referencing the films made by Warner Brothers, and so there's numerous references to other Warner Brothers properties. The Bat Gremlin, when he flies out of the building, there's the Batman symbol. A gremlin at one point gets the Warner Brothers tattooed on his chest. Just all these like completely fourth wall breaking gags.
Yes, I wanted to bring up the fourth wall. First key moment is very early on when the three or four bad Mogwais appear, and they throw Gizmo in the air duct, in the air vent, and they pull off the vent, and the one bangs into the other one, and we have the cartoon bong sound. Followed by birds chirping. That's the first clue. Never had non-diegetic sound effects in the first one that were cartoon-based, as far as I recall.
Maybe there's the part with where the gremlin has a little puppet on its hand and they hit it with a mallet. There might be one there.
You're right.
Maybe.
You're right.
But nothing like with comical like bird chirping sound effects or anything.
Then the second part is when Leonard Maltin shows up.
Oh yeah, that part.
And that's when the fourth wall breaks.
Leonard Maltin is reviewing the first Gremlins because in reality he gave it a bad review.
Yes.
So the fact that he has a sense of humor about being in this one is funny, but
and
the Gremlins attack him for giving the film a bad review.
He changes his mind.
No, it's a 10. It's a 10.
Wait a minute. Just kidding. Ow, a 10. It's a 10.
That's him holding up that Gremlins VHS cassette breaks that fourth wall immediately, and it's all bets are off from there on out. And then of course we have the famous film print melting scene.
Well, I wanted to mention that. Is that even a fourth wall breaking? What is that?
It's a fifth wall breaking.
It's a fifth wall breaking, but that's, yeah, it's like an old William Castle gag. Like,
it's a gag on the audience.
Where you, yeah, like William Castle would have, you know, fake skeletons, you know, fly across the audience, or, you know, smell-o-vision and stuff like that. And I remember seeing this in the theater, and I remember vividly that moment in the film where the film breaks and people in the theater being like, oh, fuck. He pulled a joke on the audience, and that's something that you can't get away with very often in movies.
The Blues Brothers guy, what's his name? The guy's he's taking the smoke break.
Oh yeah, Henry Gibson. He doesn't even have a line in the movie.
Yeah.
He's just
medical benefits cut.
He gets fired for taking a smoke break.
That scene, of course, is just to have Henry Gibson in there and Robert Picardo fire him. It's setting up the fact that they have security cameras everywhere, and they catch Billy Peltzer shutting off the water.
Yeah.
And of course, Phoebe Cates is a tour guide, so she knows where the mechanics are to shut off the water to the building.
Yeah.
Isn't it great? I love when scripts set everything up.
Yeah.
Everything.
Even amidst all the chaos, they're still setting everything up.
Even the paper shredder is set up, Jay.
Yeah. That's where they were like, okay, we have the gross scene in the first movie with the microwave. We got to do something like that at exactly page 45 of the script.
Microwave.
They do, in that scene, they do a gag that they do a number of times in the movie, which is when there's a wide shot of a gremlin like on somebody, the actor has like a fake hand, and he's actually puppeteering.
Oh.
So you see it, once you notice it, you can't unnotice it, because the hand just like, it looks like a rubber hand.
I always notice that there's a big master shot of the gremlin chaos in the lobby, and there's one gremlin that's just like stuck to the wall that just doesn't move, and it's just like center frame.
I think there's a couple parts like that.
There's nothing else around it. It's just like, oh no. But that's what I love about all the practical puppets. It's just
there's so many of them, which is why we're able to just buy random parts, because there's just so many in existence. But the way they set up the spider gremlin turning into the spider, it's lots of. And I noticed this is something just relatively recently I've noticed in a lot of Joe Dante's movies. It's the cinematography and the use of shadows. John Hora, I think, is the cinematographer. He did this movie, he did the original movie. He did like The Howling and The Burbs. He loves shadows, and he loves shadows cast of Venetian blinds. I don't know if you noticed that in this movie. There's a lot of that. Some really great work in The Howling as well, but yeah, when the Mohawk turns into the spider gremlin, we just see its shadow. So it's like you just see the legs coming out, and it's like that'd probably be really easy to do if you're just filming a shadow, because you don't have to see it like actually coming out of its body. Also in those deleted scenes, I just rewatched those, they make a mention of, there's like lots of comical voiceover in the movie, like robot voice coming from speakers in the building.
Fire, the untamed element, oldest of man's mysteries, giver of warmth, destroyer of forests. Right now, this building is on fire.
What?
Yes, the building is on fire.
In the deleted scenes, that voice says, they're talking about how great Clamp is, and says, Clamp would make a great president. Just saying.
Roll it.
Oh, and I've lost those 10 pounds, too.
You know, I've been thinking, Mr. Clamp would make a great president.
Gremlins 3.
Gremlins 3, President Clamp.
Oh, let's do some memos.
CinemaSin number 2.
Oh no.
We have the world's first smart building, automation, innovation, talking elevators. Robert Picardo has a.
Oh, it's like a little wand.
It's a wand.
Yeah, and it waves over their name badge.
Their name badge, which has like a barcode, bloop, bloop, and it comes up. Peltzer, clearly everything's computerized, automated. Yet, when Phoebe Cates ends her shift, she still uses a pencil and paper and a classic time clock.
Oh. That would have been a good moment to do some sort of gag, some sort of other technology gag. That doesn't work, of course.
Yeah, it stuck as out of place to me. I mean, it's probably a visual thing. Like the audience doesn't know she's done with her shift.
Yeah.
They think maybe she's on break, and if she goes up and does, you'd have to build a prop. She puts her thumb on a thumbprint, goes, your shift is now over, and then they'd have to build that. And let's just throw a time clock in there. People will understand that in 1990.
Yeah.
They'll get the time clock. She's done with her shift. She doesn't have to do anything else. Got it.
Yeah.
Visual. And of course, the Picardo name badge swipe just shows how insignificant Peltzer is in the big scheme of things. He's just a cog.
Yeah.
And he's just a number and a thing. So visuals, they're both visuals. That's all. But it's a cinema sin.
It's a fault of the film. As a kid, the fact that it was this big, smart building, but all the technology was like broken all the time, nothing ever worked. As a kid, I thought that was just like the movie's version of the inventor dad from the first one. As a kid, I didn't understand the idea. I didn't understand like the history of what a gremlin was.
Yes.
And the idea that it's something that's, it was a World War II, right?
Yes.
That gets into your plane and tinkers with it and fucks up your plane.
It's just a mechanical problem.
Mechanical problem. So that's the idea of the first movie is like you have the inventor dad, and that's sort of thematically goes along with the gremlins fucking up tractors, and they're on the street lights and everything. And then so the second movie, that's sort of that movie's reference to that, the theme of that.
Yeah.
And that's something I didn't get as a kid. I thought it was just them kind of repeating the same type of jokes from the first one of technology that doesn't work right.
Right, and that's a weird thematic thing that doesn't quite make sense.
That stuff doesn't work before the Gremlins are even involved?
Yes, because you got, in the first film, Peltzer has a Volkswagen Beetle that doesn't start.
Yeah.
He should have had a Gremlin. Maybe too on the nose. But his car doesn't start, the dad's inventions don't work. There's a lot of things that don't work prior to the arrival of the Gremlins.
That's true, yeah.
The Clamp Smart building should have worked flawlessly. Because the door malfunctions in the beginning, the revolving door, the flashlights don't work. There's so many things that don't work. See, that's why this movie is a little frustrating to me, because it's such a good premise. And it's, even though it repeats all the same beats as the first film, and I wanted to ask you a question about this, but it is the perfect sequel. And in a way, if it had just continued on as a sequel, like just dark,
Gremlins are back.
They take over a hot skyscraper. Would it have been as magical?
Oh no, I mean, you could do a version of this exact story without all like the meta gags and without going so far with the Looney Tunes stuff.
Yeah.
And you would have a pretty standard sequel.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it special, and what makes it stand out is all the extra stuff that went into it. I mean, the movie starts with a Looney Tunes cartoon.
Yeah, I wanted to make special mention of the toolbox moment in the bathroom. Like there's all those, like you said, the beats. The Gremlin gets in the shredder.
Yeah.
Is equivalent time-wise to the Gremlin in the blender.
Yeah.
In the first one, of course, you have the famous scene when they open the box.
Oh yeah. You see Gizmo for the first time.
Hands come up, and see him. In this one, we've seen him in close-up for like 20 minutes, and then we recreate that initial reveal scene.
Yeah.
In the bathroom, even though we've seen him on camera.
That's true.
And it's sort of like almost an intentional wink. To the structure.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting. We talked about the Canadian restaurant. Marla's trying to seduce Billy Peltzer to move her way up the corporate ladder, because Billy was just complimented by the big man, Mr. Clamp himself.
That's all it takes.
So
now she's all over him.
Yes, which of course she's unsuccessful, and then the Canadian waiter says, "A little horn, eh?"
How about some horn?
How about? Oh no, he says, "How about some horn?"
Yeah.
Which is, of course, a sexual joke.
As he brings chocolate mousse, which is a moose head made of chocolate.
But he does say, "Another Molson, eh?"
Are you okay? You want another Molson, eh?
No thanks, really, I'm fine.
To Billy Peltzer. And as a kid, I didn't know what he said, because I didn't know what beer was. I thought he said another mole, son. Like, do you want another mole? And I didn't know what he meant. But now I know it's Molson. Molson Ice. The
Canadian beer. Yeah.
Canadian beer, famous Canadian beer. Their only beer. But
and he's wearing like a Mountie outfit
Yeah,
too.
a Canadian Royal Mountie. It's a wonderful location. They could have just done it at a generic New York restaurant, but they have a gag.
Right.
And it's just a wonderful scene. But Marla's drinking wine, Billy's drinking Molson. Who's drinking the Jolt Cola?
That would be Marla. I'm going to say that's Marla, just based on her personality.
Wine chased by Jolt?
I'd say.
I need answers. Can we talk about maybe the best scene in the film?
Ooh, I don't know which one you're going to say.
There's so many.
There's a lot of great scenes.
It's one of my favorites that now I laugh hysterically at, but when I was younger, I was like, what? The Futtermans are looking at the Cathedral of St. Eva Marie.
Yeah.
And then the Bat Gremlin escapes.
Right.
And Dick Futterman, of course, has PTSD from Gremlins. And of course,
that's his arc in the movie, is that he realizes that he was right to be paranoid.
Right, that is. And he gets his revenge when one blows snot on him, picks it up, and throws it back.
Throws it down an elevator shafts.
Yep. So the Bat Gremlin escapes, and for no reason at all attacks Dick Miller.
Just coincidentally goes right, finds Dick Miller.
Out of thousands of people on the street.
One of them!
And this, I think Dick Miller and the puppet are on a green screen.
Dick Miller isn't.
Dick Miller isn't.
But he's looking in the wrong spot. Parts. He doesn't know what's happening.
So the Bat Gremlin's attacking Dick Miller, and he's like kind of stumbling down the street. And I always thought it was just like a bad special effect, not the bat, but just the people, like just like a bad scene. And I was like, why is everyone just like walking? They just filmed people walking, and they forgot the special effect was there. And then I was like, oh no, that's brilliant.
The fact that nobody's paying attention.
They're just New Yorkers,
right?
They just don't care. And the fact that there is a winged lizard monster attacking Dick Miller in broad daylight, and New Yorkers are just, one guy doesn't even look up.
Yeah.
He just pushes past him, and then he throws it into the wet concrete, flies up, and creates a gargoyle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like all those little pieces.
Yep.
How that ends up as a gargoyle. It's just, it's genius. It's so smart.
Yeah.
He could have just stomped on its head, smashed it. But they turn it into a gag.
Right.
My only reservation with it is the fourth wall breaking, the Leonard Maltin scene, the film reel breaking, and I think maybe the Batman logo.
So you're saying you don't like
those?
Those
are things that I think take it just a little too far.
Oh, see, I love all that. All the mocking of the first movie and the everything that made the first movie successful. That even that's free to make fun of.
But like when Clamp says like, oh, that Gizmo's very cute. I see a doll with suction cup hands.
Yeah.
Like that's
winking without completely breaking the fourth wall.
It's funny. I look at him. You know what I see?
What's that, sir?
Dolls with suction cups staring out car windows. A big float in the Macy's Day Parade. Has anybody ever talked to you about merchandising?
Exactly.
Okay, fair enough.
That to me is the line. The fact that a gremlin had a shirt on with a gizmo with a ghost no sign through it.
Yeah.
Like how did they make that? And I get hung up on little things like that.
Yeah.
And I get it. It's fun.
It's Looney Tune logic.
It's Looney Tunes logic, and it's okay. But then you have that mixed with some really great gremlin scenes that are really scary and well done. The elevator scene. I think the perfect gremlin tone to me is when Phoebe Cates is stuck in the elevator.
Oh yeah.
And she says,
"Elevator, call the alarm."
Sound alarm, and they're
Sound alarm.
What about any time where they put the gremlins in like the situation that a person would be in, like when they're like they're selling stocks, they're like buy, sell, buy, sell.
We're advising all clients to put their money in canned goods and shotguns. Yes. When gremlins imitate people, I think I laughed out loud when the secretary eats the sandwich with the mousetrap in it. She exits scene.
Yeah.
And then the gremlin takes over the secretary. He's going G-H-A-K. Like he's just like mashing his fingers on the keyboards. Gremlins can speak English when it's convenient and it's like funny.
Right.
But they shouldn't be printing T-shirts.
That's where you draw the line? Okay. The thing is, though, if you want to continue a franchise, this is probably not the right way to go about doing it. I think Joe Dante, he didn't want to make the sequel. He got to do whatever he wanted, probably knowing it would end the franchise. And it has, until relatively recently. There's talks of that cartoon or whatever, and I'm sure there'll be a TV show or a movie.
I hope not.
Well, what I've said for years, the way to do it in a new movie is have them be physical puppets and just use computer effects to digitally erase the puppeteers. Yes. Have them full body. That's how you do it. Because that's a big part of the charm of the movie, is not just that they're monsters running around. It's the actual craft of like the puppetry too.
Right. Because you'll have a scene where there'll be 1,000 gremlins and they'll be like running up a hallway, jumping off the walls and bouncing around.
Yeah,
and they'll do that.
And that loses a lot of the. It'd be like, you know, having a Muppet movie where they're all CG. Like the puppets is the whole thing.
This is an interesting point because I always remember Gremlins, original Gremlins, Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
Spielberg's name was always on it.
Oh yeah.
I don't remember that in this. I remember the 3 credits: Spielberg, Kennedy, and Marshall.
Yeah.
But
the first one, isn't it? It's like Steven Spielberg presents or something.
Yes. Yeah, Spielberg is, and I used to always think like Steven Spielberg made that movie because I didn't know, I was stupid. And then this one, I don't recall.
Yeah, I don't think so.
If it's just like Spielberg.
Spielberg produced it.
Because he's like, what? You're gonna make it a Warner Brothers movie?
We're not gonna trick anybody into thinking this is one of my movies. Not this time. Yeah, it sticks out like a sore thumb for that era of like sequels and franchises and stuff, and just movies in general. Like, I don't think we'll ever get a sequel like this again. No studio would allow this to happen. Yeah. I recently rewatched The Howling, which I hadn't seen in a long time. That's the movie that got Joe Dante the job directing Gremlins. And that is, for the most part, just a straight-up horror film. It's a werewolf movie. And Gremlins is a pretty dark horror movie in parts, and then it has some silly parts. And then after that, Joe Dante mostly did kind of lighter, goofier stuff. And so I'd be curious to... I always wish he had done more like serious horror movies, like Howling and Gremlins. But he made Gremlins 2, which is equally great, just in a different kind of way. It's rare you can do that, where you make a sequel that deviates so far from the tone of the first movie, but still works in its own right.
It didn't work for everybody.
No.
It's a very, very divisive movie because
well, that's the tricky thing with sequels is so many people, they just want that feeling again of the first movie, and that's understandable. And I think in certain, like, you couldn't do anything. We keep bringing up The Last Jedi, but that's the reason why a lot of people dislike that movie, because you can't dismantle something like that. But Gremlins, when it's like about the spirit of anarchy and destruction and fucking things up, like, it's the perfect vehicle to do something like that with a sequel.
Yes, it's almost poetic because it's meta in a way that Joe Dante is the Gremlin of his own production.
Sure, yeah.
And that's the genius part of it. I mean, yeah, you can either make a sequel. Most sequels are substandard. From the first one, with rare exceptions, Empire Strikes Back, where it elevates the material. You could have attempted to elevate the material. Most times that fails. That has a low success rate.
Yeah.
What a wonderful, 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 lovable mess it is. I think it's now up there.
It's great. And a movie like it will never be made again.
It ages like a fine wine.
Yeah.
Please don't make Gremlins 3.
Just don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't reboot it. It'll happen. Don't reboot it. It'll happen.
So we'll see you in 2023 for our Half in the Bag episode on Gremlins, because it'll just be called Gremlins.
Oh God, all the paint is flaking off.
Oh Jesus Christ, this memorable movie prop, and we were destroying them.
Oh Jesus, this movie history is just crumbling away at my fingertips.